Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Coyote culprits. 2 people arrested for feeding the animals in Stanley Park. Also,
you do worry, am I making the right call?
BC's push to get more pregnant people vaccinated with an increase in women carrying babies in intensive care. And
it looks like they're just trying to make extra money.
Why one Vancouver man thinks his landlord is finding loopholes to make him pay more.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. After dozens of attacks and the closure of Stanley Park, 2 people have been arrested for allegedly feeding coyotes in that forest. Dan Barrett joins us live from the park tonight. Dan, what more do we know about the people who are in custody?
Not much at this point, Anita. We don't know if they've been charged with anything under the Wildlife Act. The Conservation Officer's Service says it arrested the pair and seized a vehicle yesterday after they allegedly fed coyotes in this park. Now, the same day, in fact, that Stanley Park fully reopened to the public after a 2-week nighttime closure to help track down and kill the aggressive animals. Since December of last year, officials say coyotes have attacked at least 40 people in this park, some of them toddlers right here at Prospect Point. The park board says it heard stories of people using raw chicken and cat food to try to lure the animals out for photos. Researchers add feeding the animals, garbage, late-night visits by people, and even coyotes getting into booze may have played a role in the attacks as they lose their fear of people. And the province says they cannot relocate them.
The direct feeding or placing of attractants out to lure dangerous wildlife such as coyotes is a dangerous activity and creates a public safety risk. At least 45 people have been hurt and 11 coyotes had to be killed in part due to this unlawful human behavior.
The service says feeding wildlife, dangerous wildlife, violates the Wildlife Act. Anyone convicted of feeding dangerous wildlife, like coyotes, could be fined up to $100,000 and face a year in prison. 2 convictions, it could be $200,000 and 2 years behind bars. Anita.
All right, Dan. Well, hopefully the saga of coyote attacks is over. Thank you, Dan. A Vancouver renter is being saddled with new utility bills, costs he says used to be included in his rent. To pay, the landlord is insisting he open an account with a separate third-party utility company. But as Karen Larson reports, the landlord owns that company.
An apartment at Holly Lodge has been Wesley Harmer's home for 5 years. He had plans to renew for a 6th until a notice arrived outlining major changes in how he pays for his unit.
It looks like they're just trying to make extra money because they weren't able to increase rent for 2 years.
The documents say Harmer must open an account with a new utility company, APT, which will bill him monthly for utility charges separate from rent. Currently, Harmer pays rent inclusive of all utilities except hydro. Harmer's initial fear is that once the utilities are cleaved off into a separate bill administered by a third party, they will no longer be subjected to rent increase restrictions. Another red flag was raised when Harmer discovered APT's address to be a basement suite in this house on Butte Street. Further digging revealed APT is actually owned by his landlord, Brent Wolverton.
It looks rather duplicitous that the owner is kind of strategically pretending like he doesn't own this company.
In a statement, Wolverton, owner of several Vancouver apartment buildings, said making tenants pay separately for utilities does not affect the limit on rent increases, which we will continue to comply with. He also said, "We think it is clear from the Residential Tenancy Act that the government meant the rental cap to limit increases in rent, not utilities and rents." A lawyer for the Tenant Resource and Advisory Center said the tightening of rent legislation has some landlords looking for loopholes.
We're seeing, I think, new tactics emerging from, landlords who put profit above everything else.
In an email, Wolverton told Harmer failing to sign up with APT could lead to eviction. Harmer has yet to sign anything and is worried neighbors will be forced to move if the cost of their apartment goes up.
I know that for some families in this building, the marginal amount of difference in monthly overhead can make a big impact.
The residential tenancy branch told CBC it is looking into the matter. Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
The man accused of stabbing multiple people in North Vancouver last March has been hit with 6 more charges. 28-year-old Yannick Bandago faces 5 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of aggravated assault. These follow an initial charge of second-degree murder in connection with the death of a woman in her 20s. The stabbing spree happened outside the Lynn Valley Library on Saturday afternoon. Police say Bandago came to North Vancouver from Quebec, where he had a criminal history and outstanding warrants. Anyone with more information is asked to contact IHIT. Well, BC's top doctor and physicians around the world recommend pregnant people get the COVID vaccine. So why are local hospitals seeing such an increase in ICU patients who are expecting? As Isabel Regam is finding out, the decision to get the shot isn't an easy one.
Mallory Gallant is 3 weeks away from her due date.
Being pregnant during a pandemic is rough.
The Vancouver resident is fully vaccinated, but the decision to get the jab did not come quickly or easily.
You do worry, am I making the right call? How is this going to affect us down the line? But we don't know that. All I know is what's happening right now.
What pushed her to do it was hearing the data about how sick pregnant people with COVID are getting.
We do know that there is an increased risk of severe illness requiring hospitalization or ICU care if you get COVID-19 when you're pregnant.
BC hospitals are seeing more pregnant people in intensive care in recent months.
I have seen pregnant women in ICU and everyone hates it. It's awful.
Dr. Kelsey Innes made her decision to get vaccinated early on in January while pregnant. Still working as an ER doctor at the time, she knew she was at higher risk. She empathizes with the hesitancy because even with her medical expertise, she had questions.
I think I'm smart and know how to read medical literature, but I think that there are people who are such experts in this area who have looked into this, and really far and away the benefit outweighs the risk.
Still, some simply want to wait.
I think for pregnant people that are choosing isolation over getting vaccinated, I think it has a huge impact for them, both potentially in their career and not returning to work when others are, but also in terms of who they are choosing to let come into their homes to meet this baby postpartum.
A new U.S. study finds people who get the mRNA vaccine during pregnancy pass high levels of antibodies to their babies, something this soon-to-be mom hopes to be true.
You just have to weigh the odds, and that was the decision my wife and I thought was best for us.
And while many pregnant people have gone back and forth, Dr. Henry says with the Delta variant, there's renewed and increased pressure to get the jab. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Vancouver.
And some dramatic increases in today's daily COVID-19 numbers. 759 people have tested positive since yesterday. That's a 30% jump overnight as we wait to see what overall trends prevail. Sadly, 10 more people have died from the virus. As of today, COVID has killed 1,910 British Columbians. Hospitalizations are still rising. 324 COVID-19 patients are in hospital. That's up more than 12% from last week, with slightly less than half in intensive care. Northern Health continues to see some of the highest rates of infection and hospitalizations. And coming up later in the show, I'll speak live with 2 doctors in Prince George. They're going to be talking about what they're seeing and what it will take to calm the COVID storm. That's in about 30 minutes from now. And the Metis Nation in BC has introduced a mandatory vaccine policy. It applies to all staff and anyone visiting its regional offices and headquarters.
We owe it to our employees, to our staff that work here at Metis Nation BC to ensure that everyone who comes into work is safe and is feeling safe. And a big part of that larger plan is now this vaccination passport.
He also says they're encouraging all Métis to get vaccinated. The nation will require proof of full vaccination by November 15th. Employees who do not comply will be put on unpaid leave. Well, this next story might make you want to book a table. Vancouver's pop-up patios are here to stay. The was intended to be temporary as a lifeline to help restaurants offer safer dining options during the pandemic. Some al fresco diners could see changes to their favorite locations. City staff will now look at enforcing accessibility and how to avoid crowding out public spaces. Let's take a look now at the federal election because it's not quite over. There are still some undecided races in Vancouver with votes still being counted. But even before the dust settles, one trend is clear. The Liberals made inroads by driving out Conservatives. Renee Filipponi shows us why it happened and why it could last.
Nice to meet you.
So now what?
Parm Bains is meeting with some of the voters who helped him take the riding of Steveston-Richmond East away from the Conservatives. Susan Barclay voted Liberal, even though she was upset to be voting at all.
I voted strategically because I didn't necessarily want a change of government at this point when we have so many issues to deal with.
Bains is one of a handful of Liberals to flip Conservative seats in Metro Vancouver.
We're really grateful for the team that came out, knocked on every door in the riding, and we got great support from the leader, Prime Minister, came here 2 times.
Welcome to Steveston.
The Liberals targeted these Conservative ridings with multiple visits and progressive policies.
So we knew that if we talked about climate change and the serious plan that we had, as well as protecting people when it came to fighting against the pandemic, we were going to be successful here.
But experts say there is more to it than just strategy. Demographics are at play as younger families and educated professionals move to suburban ridings.
People are more affluent, and along with that often goes the kind of values that are more to the center left, and that Liberals can pick up in those places.
And for this demographic, housing affordability is key.
Well, so many great candidates.
Conservative insiders say Aaron O'Toole missed the mark on it. There is also belief his tough stance on China may have cost votes in Richmond, where a vast majority of the residents are of Chinese descent.
It's very difficult to be seen to be anti-China without being anti-Chinese for a lot of people in that community.
It's unclear if this increase in Liberal seats will lead to more sway for BC issues in Ottawa. There will be a better sense of that once Trudeau announces his new cabinet. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
Police used a cherry picker to extract an anti-pipeline protester sitting in a tree this morning in Burnaby. To stop construction on the TMX expansion project near Lost Creek, protesters built platforms in the canopies 15 feet off the ground. They call them sky pods. Police specializing in high-angle rescues brought one man down and arrested him for violating a court-ordered injunction. Activists have occupied trees along the construction route for more than a year. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here now with a look at that weather. And boy, that weather is looking pretty summer-like, Joe.
Ooh, it is, Anita. Yeah, I actually have some temperatures in the forecast that are a little more mid to end August for parts of BC. So a nice turnaround as we officially head into the fall season. Let me take you through the current temperatures right now. We're already feeling a mild evening out there. These numbers are basically our seasonal for this time of the year. So a 17 at YVR, sort of our afternoon high, a little warmer out towards the valley, 19 over towards Nanaimo and Port Alberni, always a little warmer in the valley, 20 for you right now. But things are going to get warmer. Most of the moisture we've got coming in the next couple of days headed for Haida Gwaii, central and northern coastal sections. That's where you've got 20 to 30 millimeters over the next 24 hours. But in the southern half of the province, check out these temperatures as I get you through Thursday into Friday. Look at that, approaching the 30s for the southern Okanagan, mid-20s up towards Lytton, 21 out towards Cranbrook. Obviously reminiscent of the kind, not reminiscent of the kind of heat we saw this summer, but definitely above seasonal for the end of the September month. Even temperatures on the south coast staying warm right through until Sunday. That's when we'll look for rain to return and very fall-like pattern beginning for the end of the weekend. But I'll break it all down coming up, Anita. Some stunning days ahead, though, on the south coast.
I like a good stunning day. Thanks, Joe. And thank you for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. I'm your host, Anita Bathe, and if you're not already doing so, you can always watch our program live on our free app. It's called CBC Gem. You can also catch us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Well, you may not have heard of Evergrande, but this giant Chinese company is making headlines for all the wrong reasons. How its debt woes half a world away could affect you next. You are watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, there have been plenty of stories about pandemic projects. We often bring them to you here in this commercial break, but this next one in particular, it's quite unique. As Colleen Jones shows us, a Nova Scotia couple turned an old church into a home.
In East Hants, just outside of Maitland, you'll find Selma along the shores of Cobequid Bay. It used to be known for its shipbuilding that thrived during the 1800s. The old schoolhouse and this church were the centerpiece of the village. The church is what brought me here today.
Built in 1850, right? It was the first Methodist church built outside of Halifax, and it was remodeled into this in 1870. So just after Confederation.
We're heading inside. Now, when COVID started, Anthony Kowalski and his partner John sold their Halifax home to start converting the church they bought 10 years ago. Well, this is amazing. As an artist, the restoration has restored Anthony.
Somewhere that kind of heals the pandemic blues, if you get what I mean. I've been able to have some new ideas, some new energy, because there is a lot of energy in here. This was one of the altars that were used.
It is unique. The old altar is where he paints now.
Command ship, control center. We call this the bishop's chair.
The altar isn't the only reminder this was once a busy church.
We've actually got a lot of the chairs that were part of the service here.
And the old stained glass?
I don't know if we have got it coming in. We have this beautiful yellow light.
Now, while the main floor of the church has all these reminders it was a place of worship, the basement, where church socials and receptions would have been held, looks like a modern condo. His paintings hang on the wall. Like many projects, there's still work to be done as we climb the narrow staircase.
So what was this? So this was the choir loft here. This is a work in progress. I actually sit at this chair, either facing this way doing the work, or that way looking at the view.
The view, the still active Selma Community Cemetery with tombstones that date back to the 1800s. This is still sacred ground. Anthony finds peace in all of this.
You're actually in this calming, bucolic paradise where you can just let your mind remove itself from some of the harshness and the sort of confusions of the pandemic.
He hopes it's a space that will push him creatively, and it looks like it already has. Colleen Jones, CBC News, Selma.
U.S. President Joe Biden says he wants to boost global vaccination rates. As Mukta Gabriselassie reports, Biden says the U.S. will double the number of COVID-19 vaccine doses it will share with countries in need.
This is an all-hands-on-deck crisis.
President Biden called for all nations to come together to increase the world's vaccination rate with a goal of 70%. He announced that the U.S. will be donating an additional 500 million doses of vaccines to nations in need, doubling its contribution.
To beat the pandemic here, we need to beat it everywhere. And I'm keeping the promise that America will become the arsenal of vaccines. We've already shipped nearly 160 million doses to 100 countries, more than every other country has donated combined.
He encouraged other countries to do their part, but will this be enough to quiet the criticism? Here's what the president of the Philippines had to say to the UN this week.
Rich countries hoard life-saving vaccines, while poor nations wait for trickles. They now talk of booster shots, where developing countries consider half doses just to get by.
Israel started giving booster shots this summer. The U.S. is working towards that. Here's what the Secretary General of the UN had to say.
A surplus in some countries, empty shelves in others. A majority of the wealthier world vaccinated, over 90% of Africans still waiting for the first dose.
Biden committed to having another COVID summit to gauge progress early next year. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Washington.
Pfizer says data suggests its vaccine could be ineffective as in children as young as 5. Canada has not yet approved any COVID-19 vaccine for kids under 12. As Wikipedia reports, parents and doctors are watching closely to see what the impact would be if it does.
There's a lot Mary Beth Kyer and Brad McCabe's children have missed out on in the pandemic: rugby, hockey, and skiing. But getting vaccinated could change that.
We're just really excited to be able to. We have 3 kids under the age of 12, so we're hoping that this will happen fast.
They just want to have time with their friends where they're not worried about, can they do this, can they do that?
Pfizer says its latest clinical trial results for children under 12 are promising.
The level of antibody the vaccine is generating in children 5 to 11 matches the level of antibody that we know provides protection for individuals 16 years of age and older.
The company tells CBC News it'll apply to Health Canada for approval, though it couldn't say when. But we already know the vaccine dosage will be smaller for younger kids. 2 shots, 10 micrograms each instead of 30, as for people 12 years old and up. But even young kids who are large for their age should still get the same protection as older children.
Children's immune systems are much more vigorous than somebody who's like 70 or 60 or 50 or 40. Or 20 even. And that's why they respond so well.
Although young children are at much lower risk of severe COVID-19 than adults, the number of kids testing positive is growing in some places. Last week in Saskatchewan, at least 20% of cases were of people under 12.
It's been demonstrated that children of all ages can be infected and can also transmit. There are different degrees. Some transmit better than others. But for sure, they play a role in the pandemic. And right now we're seeing that.
If the Pfizer vaccine is approved for use in 5 to 11-year-olds in Canada, more than 2 million children will be eligible to get the shot. Wikipedia, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario is the latest province to roll out a vaccine passport, and it's not been without controversy. Some saying it offers them peace of mind, but some business owners are all for it, while others worry about the impact on their bottom line. Chris Glover has more on what we're hearing after the first day.
For the first time in a while, Vivian Poon is focusing on the bag instead of wondering if the person next to her is vaccinated.
You get that peace of mind knowing everyone else here is kind of in the same boat as you, vaccinated, just adding that added level of safety.
Starting today, like other non-essential businesses, in order to exchange jabs inside United Boxing Club, you must first show proof you're fully vaccinated.
As a business owner and even as a person, asking someone's health information, private health information, doesn't sit right with me.
Owner Jordan Thomas wishes there was a less invasive option, but surveyed his members and found a lot of support.
They were waiting for the vaccine passport policy to be in place for them to come back. So that's really what drove our decision.
No vaccine passport! But some have protested the idea, and this morning anti-vaccine graffiti was spotted at a vape shop on the Danforth. To avoid any destruction and violence against staff, Peterborough restaurant Apollo Grill is switching back to takeout and delivery only.
They were very nervous about what if I ask somebody and, there's a confrontation.
There were large tables.
For now, indoor dining scattered throughout St. Lawrence Market is gone, opting to act like a grocery store, not a restaurant, to avoid lineups checking up to 10,000 guests on some days.
It didn't make sense for us to keep the common area seating and have every single person who entered the building show their certificate, just for the limited number of people who might be sitting and eating.
But with around 80% of Torontonians fully vaccinated, St. Lawrence crepe vendor Chris Lee says it's unfair.
They just taken away all the seats, so nobody's able to eat, which affects my business.
Oh, put some pepper on there. Yeah, so some nice rolls.
Hugo Barraza doesn't generally eat inside at the market.
Unless it's wet like this, raining, where you want to be eating inside. But yeah, I don't think it's, I think it's a little bit smart in the end where like you can just have people going in and out.
And I just click like this here and then it shows up. So it's a little easier.
Colin DeGroot has his proof ready to show. While he's worried about lines and confusion everywhere, he says this needs to happen.
It's kind of what they got to do to make people get the vaccine.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business surveyed its members and found that 45% were generally supportive of this idea, but still a full 40% said that they were opposed. And now that organization is calling on the government to introduce de-escalation training for businesses, as well as providing funding just in case there is any destruction related to these new certificates. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Anger is building in the southern Manitoba community of Winkler against the town's latest COVID-19 measures, including a COVID-19 passport. Karen Pauls tells us as police ask for calm, some doctors are thinking about leaving.
For this Winkler area farmer, dealing with this summer's drought was tough.
$3 is the total.
But he says the battle over COVID-19 restrictions has been harder.
My family, the adults are all double vaccinated and we wear masks when appropriate. But I know there's some issues in the community, and there's some hard feelings about it.
It doesn't take long to find them.
I'm not vaccinated, and I'm not planning to. I would like just to drop the restrictions and just go forward.
About 41% of Winkler residents have been fully vaccinated. In the surrounding areas, that drops to 23%.
3 Americanos and 2 pumpkin spice lattes.
It's created tension for businesses now required to ask for proof of vaccination. Many have closed indoor dining so they don't have to.
With the state of our community right now, it's just I didn't want to have to tell presumably more than half my customers that I'm not able to serve them.
There have already been confrontations.
I'm not wearing a mask for my own religious beliefs.
Winkler's police chief is calling for an end to the anger and resentment, saying drug traffickers and career criminals are more respectful to law enforcement than people protesting the public health orders.
We get so much pushback, people driving by that maybe aren't even involved in the incident, yelling profanities at the officers.
During the election campaign, thousands rallied here with the People's Party of Canada, pushing back against vaccine mandates. The local PPC candidate won 22% of the vote. It all has some local doctors considering leaving, including colleagues of this one.
To seemingly not trust us on what we think we've learned about the pandemic, the virus, the vaccine, how we're going to get out of this, it's a little difficult.
Community leaders are appealing to the majority of people they say just want to do the right thing. But both sides say they're fighting for something worth defending, and they're not planning to back down. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winkler, Manitoba.
Well, the days of driving south to Blaine for a short visit might seem like a distant memory. The U.S. land border has now been closed to Canadian travelers for 18 months, and it's hitting Canadians living near the border hard. As Jennifer Lagrassa reports, what was once a quick drive is now an expensive plane ride, and the price of the ticket is just the beginning.
Round-trip plane tickets, about $800. Baggage is $65. 2 COVID-19 tests, about $267. And then parking and gas for the vehicle is about $240. In total, that's $1,300 and about 20 hours of travel time. All of that to get from Windsor to Detroit via Toronto. That's compared to the $12.75 plus gas that it normally would have cost to get to the Motor City pre-pandemic.
One Windsorite says they had the funds to get this done, understanding that many others don't.
The purpose of this tweet was more to showcase that, you shouldn't, love shouldn't be divided because of how much money you have in the bank or how much vacation you have banked.
Echoing those statements is master's student Yahya Alphonse. He moved to Windsor for school in May. By now, he thought he'd have the opportunity to cross the border. Without it, he says his education is paying the price.
When I was applying for my master's degree, one thing I really liked about the University of Windsor
was its proximity to the US and Detroit. And since I knew I was going to specialize in international relations and global politics, and also want to look at things like trade, I felt like this will be a perfect location. One thing that's very important is kind of cross-collaboration learning, where you get to learn from other people. You go for conferences, you go for events, and you get to network with people, and you get to learn their perspectives and their ideas. And that was something I was hoping to really capitalize on.
Alphonse hopes the border reopens by the time his program finishes in the next year and a half. He says as a student, he can't afford to fly across, so the land border is his only option. But for now, it's a waiting game. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Sigh of relief for the financial markets today after an announcement from Evergrande, one of Canada's China's biggest companies. It says it will make a payment on its debt that's due tomorrow, but more deadlines are coming. As Peter Armstrong shows us, the ailing multi-billion-dollar giant is in danger of collapse, and global markets could feel the impact.
It's hard to find a more perfect metaphor for China's real estate market. The market's so oversupplied, it's easier to demolish stalled developments like this than to figure out what to do with them. After a decades-long construction boom, one estimate suggests there are enough unsold properties in China to house 90 million people.
It is certainly a source for concern.
If real estate in general is cause for concern, the enormous developer Evergrande may be the trigger. The sprawling company has built thousands of buildings. It owns a soccer club, a water company, even a cosmetics company. It also owes at least $300 billion, and if it can't pay its debts, many fear such a huge company will drag others down with it.
The worst case scenario, of course, nobody probably want to see that because it will have ripple effect around the globe, is for the company to default, to essentially just go bankrupt.
Employees and investors have taken to the streets demanding their money back. The very idea that Evergrande is in trouble wreaked havoc on markets.
I don't think you're going to see a complete meltdown. You're certainly going to see a correction in nervous global stock markets, which frankly, we're already nervous because of Delta.
So all eyes are on Evergrande and its latest debt payment it may not be able to cover. There's speculation the Chinese government may step in to help, but it hasn't yet.
The government wants to teach a lesson.
The question now is how far Beijing is willing to go. The risk here isn't just one company. The risk is that real estate, one of the biggest drivers of China's economic growth, has run out of steam, and that Evergrande is just the beginning of a deeper, more profound crisis. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Amid a crisis of COVID in BC's north, two frontline doctors tell us what's it like behind the scenes and what they hope might turn the tide. They'll join us live next.
Most of our large cities have come to terms with the freeway. Some, like Montreal, have embraced it. Others, like Toronto, have compromised with it. And some, like Vancouver, have had nothing to do with it, until now. The province is building a new sports stadium and exhibition site downtown, so the city has to decide how it's going to get people to and from the site once it opens. Jerry Thompson has the story.
Although several major commuter highways lead up to the city's edge, Greater Vancouver, with roughly 1.3 million people, has no downtown freeways. Hardly any other city has grown that large without them. But now, the city is under pressure to supply road service to the new stadium and exhibition site. In the past, council has resisted the pressure to put freeways through old downtown neighborhoods like Chinatown. But last night, council couldn't decide what to do.
How do you expect to get people into that stadium? To drop them in by Zeppelin or helicopter or hovercraft? How do you expect to get 60,000 people in?
There isn't an ounce of planning in it. There's a lot of hogwash, but there's no planning. It's the biggest line of BS that's ever been given. There isn't any more planning in it than the man on the moon.
Stadium should be ready by 1983, and by then the exhibition project will also be well underway. That means thousands more people and thousands more cars coming into downtown Vancouver. Even though it has fewer people than Vancouver, Seattle has an extensive freeway system. With it comes a staggering road maintenance bill, and they're still looking for $2.2 billion to finish building the last 7 miles.
The freeway system that started under Eisenhower and that spread across this country, mainly as a civil defense mechanism to move people, that's why it was sold, pushing people from one coast to the other, devastated cities in its path, cost us a tremendous amount of housing, cost us separated and severed our cities. In large part, it was a disaster.
We keep saying, if you want to work in our downtown and use our streets for 2 hours a day, you come by public transit. We're not going to see you destroy our neighborhoods with 6, 8-lane roadways, crisscrossing the city, turning it into an urban jungle.
So far, the mayor hasn't been able to persuade council to see things his way, but the city must make up its mind soon because the stadium just won't wait. Jerry Thompson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. 2 people have been arrested and a vehicle seized in connection with the alleged feeding of coyotes in Stanley Park. Feeding dangerous wildlife violates the Wildlife Act, makes the animals less fearful of humans. So far, 45 people have reported being nipped or bitten by coyotes in the park. The man charged in the killing of a young North Vancouver woman outside the Lynn Valley Public Library has now been hit with 6 more charges. The attack happened at the end of March. Yannick Bandaogo now faces 5 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of aggravated assault, and his initial murder charge.
When I was newly pregnant, there was sort of talk in the air about whether or not pregnant people should get vaccinated. And then by the time I was further along in my first trimester, there was more data coming in at that point. Obstetrics Canada said, yes, please go get vaccinated.
People expecting a baby during the pandemic have a lot more information to consider compared to a year ago. New data out of the U.S. suggests people who get an mRNA vaccine while pregnant pass high levels of antibodies onto their babies. BC doctors are recommending pregnant people get vaccinated, and right now there's an increase in expecting mothers in the ICU in this province. Well, hospitals in BC's north are overrun and stretched to the limit because of an influx in unvaccinated COVID-19 patients. To better understand what's happening there, we are joined live by Dr. Firas Mansour, the medical director of Prince George, and Dr. Simon Rose, an ICU physician there. Thanks for being with us tonight. Dr. Rose, can you paint a picture for us? We're hearing of, a few nurses doing the jobs of many. We're hearing patients being turned away and sent to hospitals in Metro Vancouver and on the island. What are you seeing on the ground? How dire is it?
Thank you. Yeah, all of those things are true. It is a struggle right now. We're seeing, as you mentioned, a massive influx of COVID-19 patients that are flooding the ICU here in Prince George. The ICU in Prince George is a regional center. We accept patients from throughout the north, a massive geographic area that includes the northeast part of the province and the northwest, in addition to regionally here in Prince George. It's been a long go with COVID, with several waves of patients, and this being the 4th wave, and so far, well, definitely the most severe yet. So we're really holding things together by a string, essentially, but keeping our heads above water.
That sounds pretty dire. Have you ever seen anything like this before working in a hospital?
With the caveat that I'm fairly new in my career, no, I haven't. This is a, I'd say it's a once in a lifetime thing, and I hope that's true. But no, I definitely haven't seen anything quite like this. It's unrelenting, and it's over 19 months now, and that's the part that is so difficult. If this was kind of a one-time major disaster where we had a big influx of patients, we can always make accommodations to deal with something like that. But it's the fact that we're so far in, and it just kind of keeps coming at us.
And you talk about all of these patients coming in. Can you tell us about who those patients are? What demographic are we talking about here?
We're seeing mostly adults, thankfully, and the age range is fairly broad, between 20 to mid 70s. They are largely unvaccinated that are getting critically ill. So I can only speak with any authority on the patients that have become critically ill and needing ICU care. And those patients, we are seeing very, very high percentage as unvaccinated. As mentioned, we are seeing a large number of patients coming from the northeast region of the province as well, which, as we do know, also does correlate with the vaccination status in that area, unfortunately.
Dr. Mansour, it's clear that the employees in Northern Health are exhausted. Dr. Rose just, gave us a little picture of what's happening. What are the risks of having staff that are overworked?
As Dr. Rose had mentioned, we've been in this for more than a year and a half, and it's relentless. And as the main center in the north, we really have not seen any time when we had no COVID patients. So we've been dealing with this for almost continuously for the past 18 to 19 months, although there has been some variability, but the staff have been pushed to the limit, and they're exhausted, and we appreciate all the effort and the work they have done in the past year and a half, but there are also limits to our capacity, and we've been asking them again and again to do the same thing. And we, at this stage, what we are asking is the public to be aware of this issue, aware of the exhaustion, aware of how tired our staff are, and the only way to help is really get vaccinated. It is an important message to everybody. Clearly, that what we have seen in the past few weeks, that mostly the unvaccinated patient who comes to the hospital, not just to ICU, but all to the medical ward and the hospital in general. We've never seen such a presented high number of COVID-19 patients in Prince George and in the north in general. Absolutely.
Are you worried, though, that mistakes could start to happen if these health workers don't get a break?
We are aware of that. We're trying to be innovative and trying to give everybody a break and definitely not reach the point of complete exhaustion. However, as everybody's aware, we all in the same. There are shortage of nurses. We've had difficulties in the north in terms of recruitment in the long run. And these are not new issues, and we've been working hard at it to try to recruit medical staff and nurses as much as possible, and whenever we can, we depend on our staff to provide the best care possible. Absolutely.
A question for both of you, but we can start with Dr. Rose. What do you need in terms of help from the province, from the people of BC? I know you want people to get vaccinated, but other than that, what can people do to help?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, as you mentioned, the short answer obviously is vaccination, but we're asking for compassion for healthcare workers too. As Dr. Mansour mentioned, a lot of our colleagues, they're like family, and they're getting beat down. It's been such a long go. So we're asking for compassion and empathy from the public, and if we can't affect any change with somebody that might be on the fence for vaccination, maybe somebody that's watching this in the public can convey that. That's what we're asking for first and foremost, is just that help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Dr. Mansour, is there anything that the province can do, or do resources need to be redeployed to come up there and help Northern Health?
We are grateful of the announcement yesterday from the Minister of Health about designating critical care beds and other health authorities. And we've been working in coordination with other health authorities to utilize those beds. I think that's a great relief, having some additional designated critical care capacity outside of Northern Health. At least so our patient would continue to receive the best care possible. We do not turn away any patient. We always work as a big family and a whole system in the province, and many of our patients in the north would have to be transferred to Lower Mainland or other health authority to receive other form of higher level of care that's not available in the north. But this is more of a coordinated effort to help us in this situation, and we appreciate the effort and the help of everybody in the province, and appreciate the colleagues in all health authorities who are willing to accommodate us. I know they all stretch to the limit, the same as we are. But we are a big family, and we work together, and we have done that in the past.
Well, we also appreciate all of the work that both of you do, and the work that all of your colleagues are doing. So thank you so much for that, and for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having us.
A volcano in the Canary Islands continues to spill lava and ash down into homes and villages below. The latest on the frantic effort to evacuate and the damage being inflicted. A destructive volcano continues to erupt on the Spanish island of La Palma, blanketing entire towns in ash. Streams of molten lava and clouds of black smoke have been pouring out of the volcano since Sunday. The lava is flowing more slowly than it did in the beginning, but attempts by emergency crews to redirect it and prevent damage have had little success. At least 150 homes have been destroyed and thousands of people have been forced to leave. No deaths or injuries have been reported so far. Johanna, those images are just spectacular. You've been tracking that lava flow. What are you seeing tonight?
Yeah, Anita, it's amazing how the array of scientific instruments that were already in place because this was an active volcano, and things have really ramped up in the past 24 hours. I want to show you one imagery from satellites orbiting from space, able to track that lava plume coming down the western flank of the volcano. And the concern is over the next couple of days, that lava plume will hit the ocean. Right now, the lava is the main threat, but the salt water may mix to create hazardous gases and ash explosions. It's moving at a rate of about 4 meters per hour, so lots of advance notice, which is why this is being called a slow-moving disaster. And I will definitely keep you posted in the next couple of days. No signs of stopping with the information we have on the magma plume underneath. Taking you back to the west coast, and we are tracking a pretty good little system for central and northern coastal sections. Haida Gwaii through to Prince Rupert, even Terra Stewart, expecting 90 kilometer per hour winds tonight from the southeast. Below that system, high pressure is building, and that's what's bringing us such a lovely fall forecast over the next couple of days for the south coast through to the interior. See a few high clouds sneak in for Friday, but the next rain event should hold off until Sunday for the interior. So that's showing up in the forecast tomorrow. Pretty wet for Prince Rupert, 20 to 30 millimeters for you. Prince George, afternoon showers, mainly cloudy day. And then we get into that sunny ridge, 16 for Williams Lake, 22 Kelowna, 17 for Victoria, and warmer still as we head into the weekend. Taking you through a look at our short range forecast for the south coast. Still fairly overcast for the overnight. It's sort of 8, 9, 10 a.m. that we really see those clouds break up. It's going to be a lovely Thursday out there. Maybe a few lingering high cloud, but then an all sunny end to your day tomorrow. Sunshine sticking around through Saturday as well. Temperatures coming down slightly. We'll notice those overnight lows cool again Saturday night. Sunday, well, it looks like a doozy, an all-day rain event. I'll keep my eye on how much as we head closer and whether or not we'll see any winds. The fall colors right now are stunning. Now, partly that is due to the stresses from the summer we've had. But Anita will be watching that closely with the rain this weekend. But all in all, not a bad forecast.
Not a bad forecast at all. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
It's a dream trip for a group of seniors from Saskatchewan, the Yukon. But they weren't just there for the beauty. They were there for the Pungara. That's next.
Never heard of Pokeshaw Provincial Park? You'd be forgiven. At about 1.7 acres in size on New Brunswick's North Shore, it's easy to miss. But once you're here, the towering sea stacks are hard to forget. Pokeshaw Provincial Park was perhaps the smallest provincial park in New Brunswick before the province handed stewardship to volunteers to manage and maintain.
It was run by the province, in the 1990s, 2000, around that time, and then they didn't run it anymore. It was just sitting here. So we leased it. And so we have a 20-year lease on the park, and we've been working on it every year, the local people.
We're two small communities, Pokeshaw and Blackrock, and we're able to have enough interest from the local population to run it. Very often tourists drive from Bathurst to the well to the Acadian Peninsula, to Caricat, without stopping along here, without realizing what the beauty of the coastline is. And the additions to the vista and the park have made it that tourists are stopping here and realizing what the coastline looks like.
Volunteers are constantly maintaining the park and constantly fighting erosion. But upgrades in recent years, including new washrooms, history placards, and a boardwalk with viewing lookouts, have vastly increased the amount of visitors each year.
We have people that come, some people stay overnight, and yeah, I would say between 15 and 20,000, whereas before we might have had 1,000 or 2,000. I think the big thing is the local interest, the local pride, the local volunteers, the participation from the community.
When a group of Saskatchewan women in their 70s vacationed in the Yukon, the highlight of their trip was meeting a dancing internet sensation who has inspired them during the pandemic. But as Bonnie Allen reports, it turns out their story is inspiring too.
Throughout the pandemic, Yukon resident Gurdeep Pandey has captured people's attention and their hearts with his joyful Bhangra dancing. His latest video features a group of women from Saskatchewan at his cabin. They're all 70 and they've been friends since elementary school.
Yeah, it was such a sweet moment. It was very touching moment for me. I loved the whole experience.
Most of us lived in the same area of town.
The 9 women grew up together in Yorkton. Then they went their separate ways after high school. Decades later, one decided it was time to reunite at the age of 50.
And she said, the 9 of us need to get together for a birthday party. So we contacted the other 7 girls and they said, yep, we're for it. And they all came back to Yorkton and I hosted the first party. And from there, we decided we had to do it every 2 years. It was kind of our pact.
Yeah, so we've been doing it for 20 years. And I know we have something special, and I'm very thankful for that.
And this year, it was Jan Clifford's turn to host in Whitehorse. She knew that meeting Gurdeep Pandey was a must-do.
About a year ago with COVID, I sent one of his video links to all 8 of them, just for their, interest, and they loved him. So quite a few of them have been following him. So I thought part of their trip to Whitehorse, I would surprise them with a visit to Gurdeep.
We all screamed, I think, when we realized where we were. And Carla started crying. Yeah, she was just believe it. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Really. A couple of the girls gave him a hug. I don't remember who.
I think that might have been me.
Oh, was it you, Sean?
I
Okay.
actually thought about that after, and I thought I shouldn't have done that, with COVID and everything, but I just couldn't contain myself. I was so excited.
So full of life and bubbly and enjoys every moment. He's got a wonderful smile and he makes you feel welcome and he makes you feel happy.
We did a Bhangra session and they did great.
The ladies say they will always remember this moment and their time together, something they cherish even more this year. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, Bhangra dancing is usually perfect for inspiration and lifting the spirits. We all need some of that sometimes. Thanks for watching CBC Vancouver News tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow.